I, 42 male, have spent the last 5 years funding the lives of my partner, 39 female, and her 2 kids, stepson, 16, and stepdaughter, 14. When we first got together, her situation was incredibly precarious. Her ex was entirely out of the picture financially, contributing 0 child support and rarely bothering to even call them. I stepped up because I cared about her and wanted to provide a stable environment. I moved them into my 4-bedroom home. I bought her a luxury SUV and gave her the money for the monthly note. I took over all the household expenses. When the public schools in our district started declining, I enrolled both kids in a prestigious private academy, footing the entire $35,000 annual tuition bill myself. Because we weren't married, I couldn't add them to my employer's health insurance, so I purchased a comprehensive private family plan out of pocket just for the 3 of them. For 5 years, I was the bank. I attended the soccer games, I helped with the science fairs, and I taught stepson how to shave. I didn't demand to be called dad, but I expected a baseline of mutual respect and familial loyalty. The shift happened quietly at first. As stepson approached driving age, his demands escalated. He didn't want the sensible used Honda Civic I had been looking at, he wanted a brand new Jeep Wrangler. Stepdaughter started throwing fits when I told her a $400 designer sweatshirt was out of the budget for a random Tuesday. Whenever I tried to set boundaries, partner would subtly undermine me, pulling them aside and whispering that she would handle it. The breaking point arrived on a mundane Sunday evening. We were sitting at the kitchen island. I was going over the household budget on my laptop, preparing to pay the upcoming semester's tuition. Stepson walked in and casually tossed a brochure for a luxury summer travel camp on my keyboard. The price tag was $8,500. I slid the brochure back to him and told him we aren't doing this. We were already stretching the budget with his car insurance premiums and his sister's travel volleyball team, and I suggested he get a summer job. Stepson sneered at me. He said his actual dad told him he should go because it's important for his college applications. I kept my voice steady and reminded him that his actual dad hasn't contributed a single dime to his college fund. I told him I am paying for his life right now, and the answer is no. Partner, who had been chopping vegetables, slammed her knife down. She turned to me, her expression a mix of contempt and exhaustion. She told me I don't get to talk about their father like that, and I don't get to make unilateral decisions about their experiences. I simply replied that I make the decisions about my money. She crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. The air in the kitchen went completely still. She looked me dead in the eye and delivered the line that changed everything. By the way, my kids don't see you as their dad. Accept it. You are just my partner. Stop acting like you have ultimate authority over them. I sat back in my chair. The room was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. 5 years of financial sacrifice, emotional investment, and compromised boundaries crystallized in that single sentence. She wasn't angry. She was stating a fact she had clearly believed for a long time. I was a utility, a walking ATM. I looked at stepson, who was smirking, and then at partner, who looked triumphant, as if she had finally put me in my place. Finally, clarity, I said. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I closed my laptop, picked it up, and walked down the hall to my home office. I locked the door behind me. I opened my browser and logged directly into the private school's financial portal. I navigated to the billing section, deleted my saved bank routing information, and canceled the auto draft for the upcoming $17,500 semester installment. Next, I logged into the private health insurance portal. The policy was in my name, with them listed as the insured dependents. I clicked the cancellation button, setting the termination date for midnight on the 1st of the month. That was only 3 days away on Wednesday. I didn't feel angry. I felt incredibly, dangerously focused. If I was not a father figure, if I had no authority or say in their upbringing, then I had no financial obligations. I was merely a host, and the hosting period had just expired. The immediate fallout was predictably explosive. Wednesday morning arrived. By 10 a.m., my phone started buzzing. I was at work, sitting in a project management meeting, watching the notifications roll in. Partner was calling repeatedly. I sent her to voicemail. At noon, I listened to the messages. Stepdaughter had a scheduled appointment with her orthodontist to have her braces adjusted. When partner handed the receptionist the insurance card, the system flagged it as inactive. Partner was furious, demanding to know why my card had declined. 30 minutes later, the school's bursar office sent an automated email. The tuition installment had failed due to an invalid payment method. A late fee of $150 had been applied, and the school requested immediate contact to avoid suspension of the student's enrollment. I forwarded the email directly to partner's inbox without a single word of commentary. When I arrived home that evening, the atmosphere was toxic. Partner was waiting in the living room, her face red, pacing furiously. The kids were sitting on the couch, looking confused and annoyed. She screamed at me the second I walked through the door, asking what was wrong with me. She yelled that the orthodontist turned them away, and the school was threatening to pull the kids from their classes. She demanded I fix the bank accounts right now. I put my keys in the bowl by the door. I told her there was nothing to fix. I reminded her that she made the dynamic of this household perfectly clear on Sunday. I am not their father. I have no authority. Therefore, I am no longer funding their private education or their private health care. I told her those are father's responsibilities, and she should probably call him. Stepson stood up, balling his fists. He yelled that I couldn't do this. He had midterms next week, and I owed them this. I corrected him calmly. I said I promised to take care of my family, but his mother informed me that I am not family. I am just a partner. And my partnership does not include a $35,000 a year scholarship fund. Partner's entitlement shifted into high gear. She genuinely believed she held the power in the relationship because I had always folded to keep the peace. She accused me of punishing children because my ego was bruised. She claimed I was legally obligated to provide for them because they had lived there for 5 years. I suggested she look up the laws in our state. Common law marriage doesn't exist here. I have zero legal obligation to her or her children, and my name is on the deed to the house alone. I excused myself and walked to my office, shutting the door. That night, the dirty tricks began. I had a secondary checking account I used for miscellaneous household expenses. Around 2 a.m., I received a fraud alert on my phone. Someone was trying to authorize a $17,500 electronic transfer to the private school from that account. I got out of bed, walked into the kitchen, and found partner sitting in the dark with her laptop, furiously typing. She had rifled through my office desk while I was sleeping, found an old, voided check to get the routing and account numbers, and tried to set up a manual e-check payment on the school's portal. I stood in the doorway and told her that was felony wire fraud. She jumped, slamming the laptop shut, and argued it was her money too, because we were a partnership. I told her I just froze the account, and if she tried to access my finances again, I would call the police. The next morning, I went to a hardware store and bought a heavy-duty deadbolt. I installed it on my office door. I spent the rest of the day freezing my credit with all 3 bureaus and moving the remaining funds from our joint grocery account into an individual account at a completely different bank. The war had officially started, and she had no idea how outmatched she was. Over the next week, partner's behavior devolved from entitled rage to desperate manipulation. She tried to enlist her friends and my family to shame me. My mother called me, extremely confused, saying partner had tearfully claimed I was financially abusing her and trying to starve her children. I simply told my mother the exact quote partner had said to me and informed her about the wire fraud attempt. My mother hung up and immediately blocked partner's number. But partner's sheer audacity got me thinking. She was far too confident when she made her initial declaration. A woman completely dependent on her partner's income doesn't casually nuke the relationship unless she believes she has a safety net. I decided to do a deep dive into the finances of the last few years. While I paid the major bills directly, I had also been transferring $3,500 a month into partner's personal checking account. This was earmarked for groceries, gas, her car note, the kids' extracurriculars, and specialized tutors for stepson's math classes. I had never audited this money. I trusted her. Since I had previously synced my old iPad to our shared home network and her Apple ID for managing household smart devices, her digital footprint was highly accessible. She was careless. I opened the iPad and checked her email app, which was still logged in. I searched for the terms tutor, car payment, and bank transfer. What I found made the blood pound in my ears. There were no tutors. For the past 3 years, partner had been systematically siphoning my money. Out of that $3,500 a month, she was transferring roughly $2,500 almost immediately upon receipt via Zelle and wire transfers to a limited liability company called Apex Consulting LLC. She was also skipping her car payments and sending that money too. I went to the Secretary of State's Business Registry website and pulled the public filings for Apex Consulting LLC. The registered agent and sole proprietor was partner's ex. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Her ex wasn't just a deadbeat, he was a parasite, and she was his host, using my money. While I was working 60-hour weeks to pay for her kids' private school and her lifestyle, she was funneling over $30,000 a year of my money to her ex to fund his failing consulting business and his rent. Worse, I found emails between partner and her ex discussing a plan. The ex's lease was up in 2 months. Partner had been actively talking to a mortgage broker, trying to see if she could use the alimony she expected to extract from me to co-sign a house with her ex. She honestly believed she was entitled to my money just for living with me. The reason she was so comfortable telling me I wasn't the father was because she and the kids had been secretly rebuilding their relationship with the ex entirely on my dime. They were planning to blindside me, leave, and use the stolen funds to set up a new life. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt a cold, surgical precision take over my brain. I printed out the LLC registry. I printed the bank transfer receipts from her email. I printed the emails between her and her ex discussing using my money. I compiled it all into a neat, organized binder. Then I drove to a local law firm specializing in real estate and civil litigation. I paid a retainer. I had the attorney draft a formal 30-day notice to quit, the legal first step for eviction in my state for month-to-month tenants, without a lease. I also had the attorney draft a civil complaint for fraud and conversion, naming both partner and her ex as co-defendants, seeking the return of the misappropriated funds. I drove home. I placed the binder and the legal notices in the center of the kitchen island, and I waited for her to walk through the door. Partner arrived home at 5:30 p.m. She walked in carrying a bag of takeout, acting as if the freezing tension of the past week was just a minor argument blowing over. She saw me sitting at the island, hands folded, staring at her. She noticed the binder and the thick legal envelopes, asking what it was with absolute annoyance in her voice. I told her it was clarity and told her to open it. She dropped the takeout and opened the binder. I watched her eyes scan the LLC registry and the printed emails. The color rapidly drained from her face. Her arrogant posture collapsed in real time. She whispered that I hacked her, her voice trembling. I corrected her, explaining she logged into a shared family device and left her digital paper trail wide open. I laid it all out. I told her that for 3 years, she had been stealing my money to fund her deadbeat ex. I brought up the wire fraud attempt. I called her a thief. She frantically tried to spin a web, stammering that it was for the kids. She claimed he needed to get on his feet, so he could be a proper father to them, calling it an investment in their family. I repeated her words back to her. Their family, not mine. Then I pointed to the envelopes. She opened the first envelope and realized it was a notice to quit. She asked if I was kicking them out. I informed her she had exactly 30 days to vacate my property. If she wasn't gone by midnight on the 30th day, my attorney would file an unlawful detainer lawsuit, and the sheriff would physically remove her and her belongings. She opened the second envelope and let out a choked gasp. She saw the lawsuit for the stolen money and panicked, saying she didn't have that kind of money. I smiled coldly and said her ex does. Or, at least he'll have to liquidate whatever assets he bought with my money. I let her know my attorney had already begun the process of placing a lien on his bank accounts. The climax of her entitlement finally shattered against the concrete wall of consequence. She burst into hysterical tears, begging me to reconsider, promising she would cut contact with her ex, claiming she loved me. I just sat there, completely immune to the performance. Stepson walked into the kitchen, hearing the crying. He demanded to know what was going on and stepped toward me aggressively. I stood up. I am 6'2", and despite his posturing, he was just a teenager. I looked him in the eye and told him his mother had been stealing from me to pay his father. I told him they were all being evicted, and since the private school hadn't received their money, I suggested he go pack his locker because he would be attending the public high school next week. The reality hit them both simultaneously. There was no safety net. The ex, completely reliant on my stolen cash, panicked when he was served with the lawsuit. Instead of taking them in, he completely ghosted partner. He changed his phone number and fled the state to avoid the civil fraud charges. True to the timeline, the private school expelled the kids 3 days later for non-payment. Partner, terrified of the impending fraud lawsuit and facing absolute financial ruin, begged for a settlement. My attorney negotiated a brutal exit. I agreed to drop the civil suit only if she signed a legally binding admission of the theft, which permanently protected me from any future insane claims of financial support or palimony, and she had to vacate the house within 48 hours instead of the full 30 days. She took the deal. She had to. They moved out on a rainy Tuesday. I watched from the porch as they loaded their belongings into a rented moving truck. Partner's luxury SUV had actually been repossessed the day prior. Since she had been funneling the car note money I gave her straight to her ex, the bank finally came to collect. They moved into a cramped, 2-bedroom apartment in a terrible school district. The house is incredibly quiet now. I changed all the locks, upgraded my security system, and booked a 2-week solo vacation to Japan using the money I saved from a single month of their canceled tuition. I learned a massive lesson about boundaries and the danger of giving everything to people who feel entitled to it all. I lost some money over the years, but I finally bought my life back. If you enjoyed watching entitlement crash and burn into absolute legal ruin, hit that subscribe button. It costs a lot less than $35,000 in private school tuition. Would you like me to adjust the pacing of the confrontation scene or refine any of the dialogue to make it sound even more casual?